The war had raged for years. The Intec, a ruthless alien species, had ravaged humanity's colonies, crushing everything in their path. There was only one hope left: an experimental weapon that could destroy the Intec fleet. It was humanity's final chance to survive. Captain Alara stood on the deck of the human flagship, gazing at the stars through the observation window. They were almost at the Intec's homeworld, the heart of the Empire. The weapon was ready, but there was a catch. It could only be used once. If they failed, humanity would be wiped out completely. "We'll make it," Alora muttered, more to herself than anyone else. But deep down, doubt gnawed at her. The weapon, built with stolen Intec technology, had never been tested in battle. They didn't even know if it would work. Beside her, Lieutenant Ryan studied the readouts on his console. "The fleet is closing in, Captain. They'll be here in less than an hour." "We'll be ready," Alora said, but her voice lacked certainty. As the flagship moved closer to the Intec homeworld, the crew prepared for the mission of their lives. It wasn't just a fight for survival anymore, it was a fight to end the Intec threat forever. Yet, a strange feeling lingered over Alara. Something didn't feel right. "Ready the weapon," Alara ordered. Ryan's hands moved quickly across the controls. But then, just as the countdown began, a warning signal blared throughout the ship. "Captain!" Ryan's voice was sharp. "We've detected a rogue transmission coming from within the fleet. It's coming from our own ship." Alara's heart raced. "What? How?" "It's from one of the senior officers, Commander Jace. It's a signal meant to sabotage the weapon." Alara's stomach twisted. Commander Jace had been with the Resistance from the very beginning, trusted and loyal. She couldn't believe it. But the evidence was clear. "Is he acting alone?" Alara asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I don't know. But there's more," Ryan replied. "It seems like he's trying to send us into a trap. The Intec fleet has altered course and is headed straight for us. The trap is already set." The room seemed to close in around Alara. She felt her hands tremble. "What do we do? We can't let them destroy the weapon. If we don't stop Jace, the Intec will wipe us out and we'll lose the last hope we have." "But, Captain, we need a plan. The Intec will be here in minutes." Alara's mind raced. She couldn't afford to panic. The future of humanity was at stake. "Alert the crew," she said, her voice now firm. "Get to the lower decks. We're not losing this fight." As the crew scrambled to prepare, Alora made her way to the command center. Her steps echoed in the empty corridors. She reached the communications room, where she found Jace alone, preparing to launch the sabotage. "Jace," Alara called. "Step away from the console. You're betraying everyone." Jace turned slowly, a cold smile creeping across his face. "I'm not betraying anyone. I'm saving humanity." "You don't understand what's really going on, Alara." "Then explain it to me," Alara demanded, keeping her voice calm despite the pounding in her chest. Jace shook his head. "The Intec are not the real enemy. They were just manipulated into attacking us. There's something much bigger at play here, something far worse than the Intec. I had to stop the weapon from being used." Alara's mind spun. She'd heard rumors of dark forces pulling the strings, but she hadn't believed them. "You're telling me there's something worse than the Intec? And you think sabotaging the weapon is the answer?" Jace stepped closer. "We're not ready for what's coming. If we destroy the Intec, we open the door to something far more dangerous. The weapon was never the solution. It was designed to fail." Alara's heart pounded. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "And you think you can stop this by destroying the only chance we have?" "It's the only way," Jace said, his eyes hard. "If the Intec die, we will be next. Trust me, Alara, I'm doing this for humanity." For a moment, Alara stood there, her mind torn between doubt and loyalty. But she knew what she had to do. Humanity couldn't afford another failure. "You're wrong, Jace," Alara said quietly. "The Intec will never stop. We end this now, or they'll end us." With one swift movement, Alara lunged at Jace, knocking him away from the console. The sabotage attempt failed, and the weapons countdown resumed. The final battle was ON.ASE. The Intec fleet appeared on the horizon. Alora knew this was humanity's last stand. The weapon was ready to fire. But even as she gave the order to launch, she couldn't shake the question, was Jace right? Had they made a terrible mistake? The weapon fired, and a brilliant flash lit up the dark void. For a moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Would it be enough to stop the Intec? Or had they, in their desperation, sealed their own doom? The war against the Intec had been long and brutal. Humanity's forces had fought tooth and nail to hold their ground. A daring mission was planned to infiltrate the heart of the Intec Empire and destroy their main fleet. This was their last hope. Captain Elena stood at the front of the room, staring at the map of the enemy's homeworld. Her team was ready. Every soldier on the crew had trained for this moment. As they prepared for the mission, Elena felt a familiar weight on her chest. This was it. If they failed, humanity would be gone. "We can do this," Elena said, trying to convince herself as much as the others. "We have one shot. No room for mistakes." Her voice was calm, but inside, a storm was brewing. The stakes were higher than ever before, and doubt crept into her mind. The Intec were known for their strength and cruelty, but something felt different this time. There was an undercurrent of tension in the air. It wasn't just the war, they had a traitor in their midst. Elena's second-in-command, Sergeant Mark, paced nervously at the back of the room. His face was tight, and his eyes darted back and forth as though he was expecting something to go wrong. "Sergeant, is everything okay?" Elena asked, her eyes narrowing. Mark hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Yes, Captain. Everything's fine." But Elena didn't believe him. She had known Mark for years. They had fought together in countless battles. His unease was unusual, and that feeling, the nagging sense that something was off, grew stronger with every passing minute. The team boarded the transport ship, their faces set in grim determination. The journey to the Intec homeworld would take hours, but Elena couldn't shake the feeling that their mission was doomed. And there was one person she couldn't stop thinking about. It was Mark. She trusted him with her life, but something about him had changed over the last few weeks. His behavior had grown erratic. He would disappear at strange times, and when asked where he had been, he would always offer an excuse that didn't quite add up. Elena had dismissed it at first, but now she wondered if she had been too quick to trust him. As the transport neared its destination, Elena pulled Mark aside in the quiet corridor. "Mark, I need to ask you something." "Something's not right. I can feel it." Mark looked at her, his eyes cold. "What do you mean, Captain?" I don't know. You've been acting strange." "And I've been thinking. Could one of us be working with the Intec?" Elena's voice dropped to a whisper, though she felt the weight of the accusation pressing on her. Mark's eyes widened, then quickly narrowed. He forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're imagining things, Captain. No one is betraying us. We've been through too much together." But Elena wasn't convinced. As they landed on the Intec homeworld and began their infiltration, the tension between them only grew. Every step they took felt like they were being watched. Elena couldn't shake the feeling that Mark was hiding something critical to the success of their mission. Hours passed, and they managed to sneak deeper into the heart of the Intec Empire. Their progress was slow but steady. But then, just as they neared the Intec's main control center, disaster struck. "Captain, we've been compromised," shouted Lieutenant Harris, a young officer. "The Intec are everywhere. We've been surrounded." Elena's mind raced. They couldn't let the mission fail. Not after everything. "Mark, secure the perimeter," she ordered, her voice sharp. But as Mark moved to take his position, Elena saw something that made her heart stop. Mark was sending a hidden signal to the Intec. Her eyes widened in shock. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Mark." "No." He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry, Captain," he said, his voice colder than she had ever heard it. "But this war has gone on long enough. The Intec offered me a way out, a chance for peace. I had to take it." Elena felt her world crumble. She had trusted him, fought beside him, and now he had turned against them. The traitor among them was Mark. You. Elena's voice cracked. You sold us out. Mark nodded. You never understood, Elena. The Intec aren't the real threat. There's something much bigger, something we couldn't even imagine. And if we want to survive, we have to make a deal with them. The realization hit Elena hard. She had been right. There was a betrayer, and it had been Mark all along. But she wasn't going to let him destroy everything they had fought for. She grabbed her weapon and aimed it at Mark. I won't let you get away with this. Mark's eyes flickered with something regret, fear, but it was too late. Elena's team had already mobilized, and the fight for their survival had just begun. The battle was fierce, but in the end, Elena and her team triumphed. Mark was captured, and the traitor was removed from their ranks. But the cost was high. They had lost valuable time, and the mission had been compromised. Still, they pushed forward. As Elena stood over Mark, who was now in custody, she could only wonder what had driven him to betray them, and what had he been promised in return. The Intec may have been the enemy, but now Elena knew there were even darker forces at play. The war wasn't over. It had only just begun. The war with the Intec had stretched on for years. Humanity's forces had fought relentlessly, but they were always one step behind. Now, as the final battle loomed, Captain Rhea knew this might be their last chance. The Intec fleet was massive, but a secret weapon, hidden deep within their own ranks, could change everything. Rhea stood on the bridge of the human flagship, staring out at the stars. Her crew was preparing for the final mission, to strike directly at the heart of the Intec Empire. The weapon, a mysterious device discovered by a team of archaeologists, was their only hope. It had the power to disable the Intec fleet, but no one knew how or why it worked. Captain, Lieutenant Vance said, breaking Rhea's thoughts, we've reached the coordinates. The weapon is in a hidden vault on the Intec homeworld. We have to move quickly. Rhea nodded, her mind racing. The Intec were ruthless. Every move they made felt like it was being watched. I know. Let's make this count. As the crew prepared to deploy, Rhea couldn't shake the strange feeling that something wasn't right. The weapon was too perfect, too mysterious. There had to be more to it than they knew. Was this truly humanity's last chance, or was it a trap? The mission began, and the team moved in silence, slipping through the dark corridors of the Intec stronghold. The Intec had made the mistake of underestimating humans, thinking them weak and easily controlled. But Rhea and her team were prepared for anything. They finally reached the vault. It was a massive door, thick with layers of advanced security, but nothing the team couldn't handle. Rhea gave the signal, and Vance and the others worked quickly to unlock it. The door slowly opened, revealing a large, dimly lit room. In the center stood a pedestal, and on it was the weapon, a sleek, metallic device that pulsed with energy. Rhea felt an uneasy chill as she approached it. "What is this thing?" Vance asked, his voice filled with awe. Rhea didn't answer. She could feel it, the weight of something ancient and dangerous about the device. They had only uncovered it recently, buried deep in the Intec archives, hidden in plain sight for centuries. But as her fingers hovered over the device, she felt a presence. Something was watching them. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the room. The team was thrown back, and alarms blared through the stronghold. The doors to the vault slammed shut, trapping them inside. "Get up," Rhea shouted, her voice sharp with authority. "We need to move. Now." The team scrambled to their feet, but before they could escape, a voice echoed through the room, cold and menacing. "You found it." Rhea's heart stopped. She recognized the voice, but it couldn't be. "Not here. Not now. Commander." "Jace?" Rhea's voice trembled as she turned toward the source of the voice. Jace, her most trusted officer, stepped from the shadows. His face was expressionless, but his eyes burned with intensity. "Jace," Rhea whispered, a knot forming in her stomach. "What are you doing here?" Jace didn't answer immediately. He simply stared at her, as though weighing his next words carefully. Then he spoke. This device. It's not what you think it is. It was never meant to be a weapon. Ria's mind raced. What do you mean? You're with the Intec? Jace shook his head, his eyes filled with something Ria couldn't read. I'm not with the Intec, Ria, but I've been working with them for a long time. This device is much older than either of us can imagine. It's not a weapon, it's a key. A key to what? Ria asked, her voice rising in disbelief. Jace's eyes darkened. A key to the truth? A truth you've all been kept from for generations. The Intec didn't invade Earth because they wanted to destroy us. They invaded because they were trying to stop what's coming. Ria's blood ran cold. Stop what? What's coming? Jace moved closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. The Intec were once human, just like you. But they changed, evolved, or rather, were forced to evolve. And they've been hiding the truth from everyone, including themselves. This device. It holds the power to awaken what's left of humanity inside them. It's the last chance to save us all. Ria felt a wave of confusion wash over her. The Intec were human? How could that be? They were nothing like humans. Now they were monsters. But why didn't you tell us this earlier? Ria demanded. Why keep it a secret? Jace looked at her, his eyes filled with regret. I couldn't. The truth was too dangerous. The Intec leaders knew what would happen if this device fell into the wrong hands. I had no choice but to keep it hidden. Ria took a step back, her mind swirling. She couldn't trust him, not after everything. So, you betrayed us for them? Jace's gaze hardened. No. I betrayed you for the future of humanity. The Intec are still part of us. And this device is the only way to bring them back. Ria's head was spinning. She had never felt so torn. The war had been so clear-cut before humans versus the Intec. But now, everything was shifting. The lines between right and wrong were blurring. A voice cut through the confusion. You have a choice, Captain. Use the device and stop the Intec forever, or unlock the truth and awaken humanity. The room fell silent. Ria's hand hovered over the device, unsure of what to do. The fate of humanity rested in her hands. Captain Lyra had led her crew through countless battles. Each victory had been hard-earned, each loss more painful than the last. The Intec had invaded Earth, destroying everything in their path. But humanity had fought back, pushing the invaders into the farthest reaches of space. Now, there was one last mission, one final chance to end the war once and for all. The Intec homeworld, Lyra murmured, staring at the holographic map in front of her. We're going in. This is it. Her voice was steady, but her heart raced. They had found the location of the Intec's most powerful weapon, hidden deep in the heart of their empire. If they could destroy it, they would cripple the Intec fleet and win the war. But the mission was far from easy. The Intec homeworld was well protected, and even getting close would be nearly impossible. Captain, are we ready? Lieutenant Eric's voice broke her thoughts. Lyra turned to face him. We don't have a choice. The fleet is waiting for us. We go in, strike hard, and get out. We don't stop until that weapon is destroyed. Eric nodded, but there was a hint of worry in his eyes. He had been with her since the beginning of the war, and Lyra trusted him more than anyone. Still, this mission felt different. There was something in the air, something she couldn't shake. The Intec had always been a formidable enemy, but this time, Lyra wasn't sure they could succeed. The journey to the Intec homeworld was long and tense. Lyra's crew sat in silence, each person lost in their thoughts. They knew the risks, and they knew that failure meant the end of everything. As they neared their destination, Lyra couldn't help but notice how quiet the crew had become. It wasn't fear. It was something else, an unspoken tension that filled the ship. The flagship finally entered the Intec system. The massive alien planet loomed in the distance, its surface scarred and dark. Lyra's eyes narrowed as she studied the planet. This was the heart of the Intec where it all began. Their home. The place they had sworn to destroy. Prepare for descent, Lyra commanded, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. We hit the target, Then we leave. No detours. Her team nodded, and the ship descended toward the planet's surface. They were heading for an underground facility, buried deep beneath the planet's crust. The weapon they sought was said to be there, an ancient device capable of destroying entire fleets with a single shot. It had been hidden away for centuries, but now humanity had found it. And they would destroy it before the Intec could use it again. ASE, the ship touched down. Lyra led her team out, their boots crunching on the hard, rocky ground. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and the tunnel stretched out before them like a labyrinth. The path was dark, but the crew moved with purpose, their weapons drawn and ready. "It's too quiet," Eric said, his voice barely a whisper. Lyra nodded. She had been thinking the same thing. The Intec were always on the move, always hunting. Why wasn't there any sign of them here? As they moved deeper into the tunnels, the feeling of unease grew stronger. It was like the walls themselves were watching them, waiting. Lyra couldn't shake the thought that they were walking into a trap. "Keep your eyes open," she ordered, her voice low but firm. "We're close." The team moved quickly, rounding corners and slipping through narrow passages. Finally, they reached a large chamber. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on it rested the weapon, a black metallic orb that seemed to pulse with a strange energy. Lyra's heart pounded. This was it. The Intec had built this weapon to end the war, and now it was within their reach. But as she stepped forward, a voice echoed through the chamber, cold and emotionless. "You shouldn't have come here." Lyra froze. The voice was unmistakable. She spun around, her pulse quickening. Standing in the shadows, his eyes glowing with a strange light, was Commander Varric, the leader of the Intec forces on Earth. But it wasn't just his presence that chilled her to the bone. It was the way he looked at her, as though he had been waiting for this moment. "Varric," Lyra said, her voice tight with anger. "I should have known you were behind this." Varric stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "You've come to destroy our weapon, but you don't understand. You never understood." "What do you mean?" Lyra demanded, her weapon raised. Varric's smile was cold. "This weapon, it's not just for destruction. It's the key to the future. The future of both our species. I was trying to save humanity, Lyra. You were too blind to see it." Lyra's mind raced. Save humanity? How could he possibly think that? "You're lying," she spat. "You invaded Earth. You slaughtered innocent people. You're not trying to save us. You're trying to control us." Varric's eyes softened, but only for a moment. "You don't understand. If the weapon falls into your hands, you'll destroy both humanity and the Intec. The war never had to happen. But now, it's too late." Before Lyra could react, the walls of the chamber began to rumble. The ground shook beneath their feet as alarms blared throughout the facility. "It's too late," Varric repeated, his voice a low growl. "You've activated the failsafe. There's no escape." Lyra's heart raced as the countdown began. The room was filling with smoke, and the weapon was pulsing with energy. "Get out of here, now!" she shouted to her team. They turned and ran, but the chamber was collapsing around them. Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that this was all part of Varric's plan. Had they walked into the heart of the Intec Empire only to become pawns in a greater game? The war had raged on for years. The Intec had invaded Earth, and humanity's forces had fought back with everything they had. Captain Maya Collins had led countless missions, watched friends fall, and seen the world she loved crumble to dust. Now, the fate of the entire human race rested on her shoulders. It all came down to one final mission. Deep inside the heart of the Intec Empire was a weapon, something so powerful it could end the war in an instant. The problem was, it was hidden in a place no human had ever returned from, the Intec Fortress. It was a labyrinth of steel and stone, filled with traps, alien technology, and the fiercest warriors the Intec had ever created. Maya stared at the holographic map in front of her, the target flashing red. The weapon was there, but getting to it would be nearly impossible. "We don't have much time," Maya said, her voice steady, despite the storm of thoughts racing through her mind. "If we don't act now, we'll lose everything." Lieutenant Hale, her most trusted officer, stepped forward. "Captain, we've trained for this. We'll get in, we'll get the weapon, and we'll get out." Maya nodded, but deep down, she wasn't sure. She knew the risks, knew the odds were stacked against them. But this was the only chance left. If they failed, humanity would fall. The Intec would wipe them out, leaving nothing but ashes in their wake. The team boarded the ship, and as they flew toward the Intec fortress, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It felt like they were walking into a trap, but they had no choice. The moment they landed, there would be no turning back. The ship descended through the clouds, the massive fortress looming in front of them. Maya took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. Her team was ready, but she could see the fear in their eyes. They were all aware that this mission would likely be their last. They landed on the outskirts of the fortress, the massive gates looming before them. The team disembarked quickly, weapons ready, moving in a tight formation. The air was thick with tension. Maya's mind was sharp, but her heart was heavy. She knew what they were about to do could change everything. But what was the cost? As they entered the fortress, the sound of their footsteps echoed off the cold steel walls. The path was long, winding, and filled with the remnants of past battles. It was clear that the Intec had not anticipated a human attack here. The corridors were quiet, too quiet. "Stay alert," Maya whispered. "Something's wrong." They continued deeper into the fortress, every corner feeling like it could be their last. Suddenly, the doors at the end of the hall opened with a loud hiss. Maya's pulse quickened as she saw figures standing in the shadows. It was Varric, the leader of the Intec forces. He stepped into the light, his cold, alien eyes staring down at her. "I knew you would come," Varric said, his voice echoing in the silence. "But you are too late." Maya's heart sank. The weapon they had come so far, and now it seemed like it was all for nothing. "What do you mean?" Varric smiled, a thin, cruel smile. "The weapon is not what you think. It was never meant for destruction. It is the key to something much bigger." Maya's mind raced. "What are you talking about?" Varric's smile faded, replaced by a cold, calculating look. "It is a weapon designed to destroy humanity's will to fight, to take away everything that makes you human." Maya's blood ran cold. "You can't do that." "Oh, but I already have," Varric said, his voice dripping with venom. "The weapon is here, in my hands. And now I will use it to end this war." Without warning, Varric raised his hand, and the ground beneath Maya's feet began to shake. The walls around them cracked open, and an enormous, glowing machine appeared. It was the weapon that could wipe out humanity's spirit. Maya knew they didn't have much time. But she also knew that if they didn't act now, the war would be over, and humanity would be enslaved forever. "Get to the weapon," she shouted to her team. But as they rushed toward it, Varric's laughter filled the air. "You think you can stop this? You can't. It's already done." Maya's mind raced as she tried to think of a way to destroy the weapon. They didn't have the luxury of time, and she had no backup. The machine hummed with power, and the air around them seemed to thicken with the weight of impending doom. In that moment, Maya made a choice. She could try to destroy the weapon, but it would likely kill them all in the process. Or she could do something else, something that would save humanity, but cost her everything. "Maya, no!" Hale shouted as she stepped forward, her hand on the device's control panel. "It's the only way," Maya said, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. "This weapon will only be stopped if the power source is destroyed." With one final glance at her team, Maya activated the device. The ground shook violently as the weapon began to overload. A bright light filled the room, blinding them all. As the light faded, Maya collapsed to the ground, her body broken from the blast. Hale rushed to her side, but Maya smiled weakly. "It's over. We won." But the victory came at a terrible cost. The fortress began to collapse, and Maya's team barely managed to escape, but they had won. The war was over. Humanity had survived. The Intec were defeated. Maya's sacrifice would never be forgotten. She had given everything for her people, and in the end, It was her final act of courage that saved them all.